liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, August 16th, 2023. Time for another show. I don't know what to do today. There hasn't been any more indictments of Donald Trump in the last 24 hours, so well, we'll be talking about the indictments that we had from before. Anyway, I'm sure we haven't exhausted that topic. And as you know, I think if you just keep talking about them, another one comes along eventually anyway to take its place. So lots to catch up on in that respect, and we'll see what Greg has available for us today. As maybe we exhausted his resources by having him on yesterday to discuss the indictment, but I think there's a lot of lingering excitement about the indictment, and we can go in that direction. There are, of course, a number of things that we need to catch up on other fronts. I tried to sneak a few of those things in yesterday. It occurs to me, well, I've got two pieces from Rosalind McGregor, which I just realized, this too I haven't prepared for broadcast in my usual fashion. Although, these things pretty much arrive ready to go for the most part. So maybe we'll toss one in there anyway, and we'll work on the other one. It's been a hectic time, as you know. It's the last week of having, it's now pre-college boy number 2 around the house. And so a hectic week of errands, getting things together, making sure that he's got, clothing, that sort of thing to go to college with. I recall that being an important part of my college experience. Not that I was a fashion plate by any means. It's just you wear it every day. Plus, you have to rely on yourself to wash it too. And that never really caught on with the first one. I mean, he did his laundry right up until, of course, the end of the semester. Being an economist, he used to, college boy number 1 would frequently actually sit down and calculate things out. Like, how long can I delay laundry? And when can I stop doing laundry so that I can take it all home with me on break and have my parents do it for me while I'm home, but not run out of clothing? And I think he actually had charts and graphs about that. I don't know if that's necessarily in the wheelhouse for college boy number 2. He'll be a chemistry student. And I think, his mind would his time would be better spent calculating what could go wrong chemically with not doing your laundry frequently enough. So anyway, I guess a biology major might be more helpful in that. But still, it's at least within the scientific realm, and I think you can work that one out. Okay, plenty of other things to discuss today. I wanted to check in on and see what subtle messages I got from Justice Putnam about everything and how it's working. By the way, power back on today. I'm told that, right? Power to the people, as he says, and here it is. And now the show follows the power. It follows the same route, apparently. Electrons, whatnot, internet, whatever you would call it. Okay, everything seems to be working and flowing. We were without power there yesterday. I hope the temperatures have abated somewhat as well. But rough day yesterday. We'll have to think about what sorts of robust backups for live streaming there really are. I was poking around yesterday. I gave myself all of 15 seconds before the show began to look at it. Do I just press a button and I can live stream on YouTube? I mean, all the kids are doing it these days, and it's certainly an option. I don't know if they do live streams without video, though. And I don't know if I'm up to turning the camera on most of these days. Might be an exciting visual element, but don't want to force it on Greg either. But I think we can probably do it with just video on me and my exciting kitchen background, and leave Greg out of it. Okay, let's see, other things to look at here. What has he got here? Other notes from Justice. So, he hints at the stories that are on his mind each day with the AOK messages, but I guess just thinking about what intro says, the jail is open in Georgia 24/7 for Trump to turn himself in. Oh, okay. That's interesting. I know he's got until August 25th And that's a huge day on this show. And where's my, the phone started ringing and there was no button to answer it. I thought this could go on for a while. But August 25th is the deadline for Trump to turn himself in. But I guess, I don't know if, Justice, are you hinting that he could take advantage of the fact that they're open 24/7 to turn himself in early? Is that something that was on anybody's mind? I don't know how that's going to work, and I guess we have yet to see whether they work something out with him on mug shots and booking and everything. I know that was in the offing anyway, but I don't know if the Georgia authorities are going to find it necessary or helpful to do things that way, or whether it's mandatory that they do that this way. All right, well, Justice says, well, they can all turn themselves in early. I guess that's true, too. At any point, by the way, this probably applies to all of you who are out there who are wanted criminals. You can turn yourself in early. There's no reason to wait until the last minute, and I think your parents probably tried to train you. Don't leave things to the last minute. Don't be a procrastinator. If you need to turn yourself in for indictment for whether it's the Espionage Act that you've violated or the Electoral Count Act or the Georgia RICO statute, why wait? And as a matter of fact, why wait to talk to Greg Dworkin? It's been long enough, don't you think? We haven't spoken to him since yesterday. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning. And we did speak yesterday.
Right.
But one of the interesting things is that what the Fulton County people, sheriff, yes, DA, judge, are all trying to do
PTA, Fulton
is
County
treat
PTA.
Trump like
Yes.
they treat everybody else. That means
Wow.
fingerprinting, mugshots, show up at the Fulton County Jail.
Cool. All right.
And
that's a
it
methodology.
was the sheriff who said, we're just going to do things the way we normally do them. And we're open 24/7, so drop in any time before Friday.
Okay. Is that where the 24/7 comes from? Very
Yes.
good. Okay. His fingerprints come out orange.
Well, yeah, and it all rubs off.
They don't need ink. They just press here.
But, when they say Trump really rubs off on you, they're being quite literally.
Yeah, well.
Rubs off.
Yeah, holy moly. It could be a lot worse than it started. But okay, Never mind.
So, there was this indictment on Monday. And what's happened is the first reaction is, oh, my God, look at this indictment.
Yes, I love that reaction.
And then the next reaction was, oh, wow, this indictment isn't, really means this, and this. Mm-hmm. And then today is
crunchy
the think
on the
pieces about, now that I've had time to
Chewy
consider
on the
the indictment, oh, my God, this is what it means.
Yeah.
So there's more stuff to talk about.
Awesome. Good. I felt like we were going to do it anyway.
Yeah. So I want to catch up on something I did mention yesterday. Wasn't quite clear about this, but the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which has been just stellar in its coverage, is helping us understand this.
Good. Thank you, Atlanta.
Following Trump indictment, agency moves on investigation of Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones.
Burt Jones.
David Wickert, who follows all things courts.
Okay.
In Atlanta. A state agency is moving ahead with plans that will determine whether Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones faces criminal charges as part of a scheme to overturn the 2020 presidential election in Georgia. I said there was a lieutenant governor who was involved yesterday. This is the one.
Okay.
Jones is one of 30 people who prosecutors said participated in a conspiracy to overturn the election but weren't charged in a Fulton County indictment released late Monday. So he's one of the unindicted co-conspirators.
All right.
But Jones may yet face charges, and his fate will rest with a special prosecutor who will determine whether further investigation is needed.
How special is this prosecutor?
Pete Skandalakis.
Oh. Okay.
Scandals are us.
Skandalakis.
Executive Director of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia said he's reviewed the Fulton County indictment and hopes to appoint a special prosecutor to consider Jones' actions soon. In a social media post Tuesday afternoon, Jones did not directly address a possible investigation. He said Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis had spent millions of taxpayer dollars in 2.5 years orchestrating a constant media and PR campaign for the sole purpose of furthering her own political career. So he is taking a very different approach than his governor, who said, look, Trump shouldn't have done what he did, but I'm not commenting on it further because I might be a witness.
That would have been wise, but here he maybe had
basically said, "Listen, everybody needs to follow the Constitution. You either do or you don't."
Yeah. What did
Lieutenant Governor's being a complete jerk?
Well, yeah, a lot of lieutenant governors do that, and by the way, if you're ever handed a line from a lieutenant governor criticizing someone else for doing something to further their political career,
take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, right. Salt. Nobody grows up and say, I'll tell you where I want to stop, where I'm ready to retire, is when I get to reach my goal, lieutenant governor.
Yeah. I decry the ambition of other people, said the Texas Agricultural Commissioner.
Right. This yeah, kids grow up, they want to be lieutenant governor. Well, in Texas, apparently they have all the power.
While the Fulton County District Attorney continues to pursue the political vendetta of the past, I have and will continue to look forward solving the most pressing issues facing our city and our state, Jones added, which is to say
that also is
me
not what
staying out of jail.
Yeah. With the possible exception of Texas, solving the political problems of the day, not often the job of the lieutenant governor.
Now, Burt Jones was a state senator at the time. He played a prominent role as Republicans in the General Assembly considered rejecting Georgia's official presidential electors. He pressed for a special legislative session to consider appointing the Trump electors. He supported lawsuits that sought to void the results, and he pressed Vice President Mike Pence to reject the official results when Congress met.
Okay. Now I see.
Now, he wasn't indicted, but the indictment mentions a tweet. Georgia Patriot call to action. Today is the day we need you to call your state Senate and House reps and ask them to sign the petition for a special session. And that tweet exactly matches Burt Jones's tweet. Which is in this article. So he's one of the ones, individual, co-conspirator individual 8.
Okay.
Now, it turns out
8
that at one point, and it doesn't say this in the article, but I read elsewhere, that Fani Willis had attended a fundraiser for his opponent in the election.
Okay, that happened.
For lieutenant governor, and therefore was barred from indicting him.
Oh, well, no. I doubt that.
So that's why there's this special commissioner being appointed to see whether or not he ought to be indicted.
Okay. Well,
I don't know what happens with that, but I'm just saying, regardless, he is unindicted co-conspirator, individual 8, and then in Georgia legalese, they generally add known by the grand jury.
Yes. They okay. So those guys know the name. They don't just use the number, but for
so
legal
they know who
document
the 30
purposes,
people
yes.
are, and that, just like we were trying to guess who's co-conspirator number 6.
Yeah.
And we still don't know because the other 5 match up with Georgia. They in Atlanta and elsewhere are trying to figure out who are the 30, and this guy's one of them.
All right, cool. I mean, I guess anybody could be in there with 30 of them.
Yeah, chances are it's a lot of locals that we never heard of.
Yeah, probably Armando.
He's not a local.
Oh, right. Yeah, but they cover activity outside of the state occasionally.
They do.
So
Armando's
if
still
there's
not happy
trouble,
about that. But
Armando's
apparently the RICO provisions are really quite broad. Now, the current discussion is whether or not, and certainly Trump doesn't, but whether or not Mark Meadows has standing to request that the trial be moved from state to federal. If it does, it would still be held in Atlanta, and the prosecutor would still be the prosecutor, and it would just be a different judge. And the main difference is that it wouldn't be televised.
Oh, okay.
And the question on the table for Meadows is he's going to make the claim that you can't try me in Georgia at state level for this because I was functioning as chief of staff to the president of the United States, arranging phone calls, holding the door open for him, and that was all official capacity stuff. The prosecution's going to argue, no, because it was all really campaign stuff. Logan Act stuff?
Oh, yeah, okay. Logan Act. Is that right?
Am I Logan Act, is that right?
Hatch?
Hatch Act, sorry. Hatch Act. You can't, as an official capacity, do campaigning. And the prosecutor's going to argue the stuff you were doing was campaigning. It was all campaign stuff. It had nothing to do with your official capacity as chief of staff, regardless of what your other duties were. If you're the secretary to the CEO and you take notes in a meeting, that's not the same thing as taking notes in a criminal conspiracy outside of what you would have in the minutes.
Right.
So just because you take notes, one is okay, the other's not. So you can't do these campaign functions and claim that it was part of your ministerial duties as chief of staff and therefore get off the hook in Georgia. Doesn't work that way. That's what the prosecution is going to say. It's going to be up to the judge.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting now that we have the new interpretation of what is official capacity in the E. Jean Carroll case. Early on, the court's wrestling with the question of, is insulting her and saying she's not his type within the scope of presidential duties such that he's immune from suit from there. And initially I recall they were willing to entertain that and say, the Justice Department will provide your defense in this case. So I don't know. Wackier things have happened. It's a good claim or a good try.
And I've quoted this, talking about some other stuff. Trump's, I was hoping Trump's defense would be, the standard Trump model of you can't sue me for this because I did this before I was president, I did this when I was president, or I did this after I was president. So pick your, A, B, or C. Whatever it is, you can't do it.
Yeah. That's pretty much the blanket defense that he lays down for just about everything. People do think that the Meadows indictment is weaker than like most of the other stuff in here. But it's RICO. Right? It doesn't have to be super strong. I don't know that they're getting that. Okay. Yeah, that may make a difference. By the way, I don't know what also happened to their thoughts about these strong independent state standing for everything. This independent state legislatures.
Oh, well,
leave
I got
it to
one
the
on
states,
that. Since you brought it up,
et cetera.
that was one of the think pieces.
Oh, okay. Well, good thinking.
This is from The Conversation, and it's written by Stephanie Lindquist, who's a Foundation Professor of Law and Political Science, Arizona State University, who writes, Georgia's indictment of Trump is a confirmation of states' rights, a favorite cause of Republicans since Reagan.
Yeah, damn it.
Contrary to what sounds like federalism,
even earlier.
Federalism doesn't mean a strong central government. Instead, it refers to a system of government in which the people may be regulated by both federal and state governments.
Yes.
Reagan succinctly expressed this in his 81 inaugural speech. It's my intention to curb the size and influence of the federal establishment and to demand recognition of the distinction between the powers granted to the federal government and those reserved to the states or to the people. And that's where being tried in the state versus federal system comes in. All U.S. citizens are actually citizens of two separate governments. They're citizens of the U.S. as well as citizens of the state in which they live, and they're subject to two systems of law. Yeah, now, the framers valued federalism and the division of power between different levels of government as a bulwark against tyranny and a protector of liberty. And as other people have pointed out, and by the way, since the states came first and then the Constitution and the federal government, there was no way the states are going to write themselves out of the equation.
Well, it was a tricky situation.
It wasn't going to happen.
To say the least. But then, I will point out that the Constitutional Convention called itself outside of that framework and sent the Constitution for ratification not by state legislatures, but by the sovereign people of the state in convention in each of the states.
And that's why, it's federalism, meaning both the federal government and the states and the power of the people.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Although, all right, well, it's tricky. It's subject to interpretation. I don't think they actually understood precisely what they were doing.
Well, they weren't thinking of this. They weren't thinking of Mark Meadows. But, as it turns out, The division of power has doubled the trouble for the leading Republican in the country. Former president and likely GOP presidential nominee Donald Trump, who now stands indicted in 13 criminal counts by a Fulton County, Georgia grand jury for knowingly and willfully joining a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the election. And knowingly and willfully, we're going to get to also, because, by the way, it's part of the reason why DOJ subpoenaed a whole of Trump's Twitter material. That's today's story.
Okay.
18 others were also indicted on a variety of charges related to the attempt to overturn the election.
Yes.
So there's two sources of law, state and federal. And it may sound like a violation of the constitutional ban on double jeopardy. It's not, because the constitutional ban on double jeopardy essentially says, according to this author, that a sovereign government can't try you twice, but different sovereign governments can try you for the same thing. So you're being tried by the state and you're being tried by the feds. Feds can't try you twice, but you can be tried once each by each of these sovereign entities.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what Reagan had in mind. The champion of states' rights to free you up from the boot of government, under the boot of government. Yeah, okay, well, good. That's true, and it seems Reagan screwed that one up. In the name of freedom, you can be put on trial by two different governments that can stand on your neck.
Right.
Awesome.
So Trump's activities in Georgia and New York may be prosecuted independently by state prosecutors, DAs, and state attorneys general under those states' criminal codes, and at the same time, any of the facts implicated in Georgia and New York could contribute to or be relevant to federal criminal prosecutions as well. So prosecutions at both levels represent the very essence of federalism.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's abundant irony in the fact that federalism, championed by Republicans and conservative judges for decades, now has come to haunt the leading Republican for the U.S. presidency. And even more ironic is that even if he becomes president again, Donald Trump will not have the authority to pardon himself, if that's even constitutional, or anyone else for the violation of state crimes.
Yes. Well, that's true. Certainly for state crimes.
I mean, that's basically the tenor of the article.
Awesome. I like it. And it does raise one last point just to throw in there. It's worth testing, and hopefully we'll never have the opportunity or the need to test it, but it's not entirely settled that everyone will agree that it's constitutional for a president to pardon himself, despite the supposedly absolute pardon power.
Well, it would go to the Supreme Court, and everybody worries what they would do. But on the other hand, the states, federalism says you don't get off the hook in New York, and you don't get off the hook in Georgia.
Yes. Well, I mean, again, that's what the way we've understood it for almost 250 years. But like you said, sometimes you worry about what the Supreme Court is going to say. Are we all pre-wrong? Did we all learn the wrong thing there? Or we learned the right thing and they just made up a bad, new, wrong thing that they're going to force on us?
Now,
we'll find out.
It turns out that there's a big story out today in Politico. Special counsel, that is to say Jack Smith, obtained Trump's DMs despite direct messages, despite momentous bid by Twitter to delay new unsealed filings show. So Jack Smith, which is standard, as Marcy Wheeler points out, boilerplate stuff. You're trying to make a case against somebody. You go to social media, you subpoena everything you can get, their phones, and so on and so forth. The issue here wasn't that. They had to show cause. Probable cause.
You have to appear before
the issue
a judge
was
and show cause.
Twitter didn't want to hand over the stuff. They wanted the right to tell Trump this was happening.
Okay.
And Jack Smith said, "What? That's crazy.
Huh.
You don't tell the perpetrator we're doing this. It's standard procedure to get their stuff and not tell them. And you've given Twitter, over 17 years, have given us tons of stuff on people that we've asked you for. Why are you making a special case for Trump?"
Well,
and Twitter took him to court, and Beryl Howell was the judge. And she said to Twitter, "What? What are you doing? Are you trying to cozy up to Trump?" She said that. That's what the transcript says.
Oh.
Why are you treating him special?
Is it Elon Musk
because
Trump? Or?
Executive privilege may be involved here, and we don't want to get into that in those DMs. And Beryl Howell said, "Did you even read the Mueller report? Do you have any idea what's been going on? I've been the judge on this stuff for years. This executive privilege crap is settled law. You can't bring it up now.
Yeah.
We've gone over this a dozen times between the January 6th committee and other things and I was a judge on a lot of that stuff. Don't give me this crap.
That's
what are
interesting.
you doing?
I want to read the transcript of that now, because if she missed the opportunity to say, by the way, I mean, did you guys learn about constitutional law on social media? Because that's not really true. Don't read Wikipedia for your stuff. Although now Wikipedia is considerably more reliable than most of social media anyway. But you can't just read online how to become a lawyer, or worse, not even bother with that. Just reading, social media and saying, well, I heard there was an executive privilege claim here. Did you read anything more than that? Did you read the newspapers? Did you read the outcome of previous cases about this stuff in this courtroom?
So Kyle Cheney wrote the story, and I believe you will find that if you look at his Twitter thread, which I will send to you, you'll get a lot more of the meat of the actual transcript than you will from reading the Politico story, which just refers to it. But in his tweets, he actually gives you the transcript, and you have Beryl Howell speaking to them and what the unsealed court documents say.
Gavel. Okay. I will have a look at that, and I have 2 minutes to do it soon.
Right. So, for example, Beryl Howell, known in this transcript as the court. The court says, what's the criteria Twitter uses, in order to try to hold things up here? And Mr. Vargas, the lawyer, says it's whether or not they're facially valid, Your Honor. And the court says, is it because the CEO wants to cozy up with the former president, and that's why you're here?
Is this Elon Musk Twitter or the other guy?
This is Elon Musk.
Yeah, okay. All right, so then it's a pretty good question.
Yeah.
Cozying up. I mean, all right. Very dumb, weird, and without basis. Oh, it must be Elon Musk Twitter. Okay. Well, that's great for us because we get to read it, and now I'm excited about the prospect of doing that. Thanks. Okay.
Right.
We'll be right back.
After the break, we're going to do David French.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, a.k.a. Darwin_Darko, a.k.a. the most reasonable man in America, a.k.a. KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen versus Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Streaming live today because the power's back on. And we had I had 2 minutes to review the transcripts, and that's never going to happen. So instead, Greg just told me all about what the transcripts were, and it sounds like must have been a banner day for Judge Howell. She must have enjoyed the hell out of that. And probably at that point you say, if I wasn't planning on retiring, this is it. Go out on top. I'm going to retire now, having had this day in court where you just get idiot lawyers standing there saying, I don't know. Well, I know. And your job is about reading and learning about things that happened already, and this is going to be fun. But yeah, all right, good, cool. Sounds like entertaining reading for the evening.
Right.
What else?
So I want to talk to you a little bit about a very interesting piece that David French wrote for the New York Times. And I've said this often. Jamel Bowie is my favorite columnist there, but if you have to pick a conservative columnist, it would not be Ross Douthat and would not be David Brooks. And it would certainly not be Bret Stephens if you want to look at something interesting. The interesting stuff's usually in David French's columns.
All right.
And in this one, the two big questions answered by Trump's Georgia indictment. And he says, the best way to think about Georgia's sprawling indictment against Donald Trump and his allies is that it's a case about lies. It's about lying, conspiring to lie, attempting to coax, coerce, and cajole others into lying. The Attorney General of Michigan just brought a case narrowly focused on the alleged fake electors in her state. Trump's not a defendant. And the special counsel, Jack Smith, brought an indictment narrowly focused on Trump's efforts to overturn the election. But the Fulton County District Attorney, Fani Willis, has brought a case about the entire conspiracy from start to finish and targeted each person subject to her jurisdiction for each crime committed in her jurisdiction. In other words, this indictment is ambitious, but it also answers two related questions. Number one, why bring yet another case against Trump in yet another jurisdiction? This is an answer to Ruth Marcus.
Yes,
who was complaining the other day, isn't this overkill? No.
Not at all.
Isn't he going to face a federal trial in Washington, D.C. for the same acts outlined in the Georgia indictment? Well, we just went over what federalism means, ladies and gentlemen. But David French says the answers lie in the distinction between state and federal law. Georgia law is in many ways broader and more focused than the federal statutes at issue in Smith's case against Trump. The breadth is evident from the racketeering charges, as Norm Eisen and Amy Lee Copeland wrote in the New York Times. Georgia's racketeering statute allows prosecutors to charge, among other crimes, a number of false statement statutes as part of a generalized criminal scheme. In other words, rather than seeing each actionable lie as its own discrete criminal act, these lies can also be aggregated into part of a larger whole, an alleged racketeering enterprise designed to alter the results of the Georgia presidential election. That's where you get to the stuff and the nonsense we were talking yesterday about conservative commentators picking out individual things. He made a phone call. Oh, no, phone calls are illegal? That sort of thing. Right. Somebody posted a picture of Charles Manson and said, oh, growing my family's now illegal?
Right.
Yet it's the focus of Georgia law that's truly dangerous to Trump. The beating heart of the case is the 22 counts focused on false statements, false documents, forgery, with a particular emphasis on a key statute, Georgia Code Section 16-10-20, which prohibits false statements and writings on matters within jurisdiction of state or political subdivisions. The statute's a state analog to a federal law, 18 U.S.C. Section 1001, which also prohibits false statements to federal officials on matters within their jurisdiction. But the Georgia statute is even broader. Simply put, while you might be able to lie to the public in Georgia, you can lie to public officials on matters outside the scope of their duties. But when you lie to state officials about important or meaningful facts in matters they oversee, you're going to risk prosecution. That's what the indictment claims Trump and his Confederates did time and time again throughout the election challenge.
Okay.
So that makes it, pretty simple and straightforward.
Yes. I mean, and it makes sense in case you were wondering about the basis of the law. I mean, it's a straight up thing of, well, look, we can't guarantee that people won't just lie and give false information and thereby mislead the government into doing the wrong things, but we can at least punish them when we catch them doing it. It's illegal to try to essentially advise and inform the government of Georgia, and there's an analog federally, right, to inform the government wrongly and incorrectly, and doing so knowingly so that they'll come out with the wrong answer. That's a fraud against the government, a fraud against the people who are governed, and it's the sort of thing that people say, well, there ought to be a law. Well, there is, and in the federal code, you see where they parked it. What was it? Something like Title 18. What was it? Section 1-1. Like, it's right at the top, it sounds like.
1001.
1001. Okay, yeah. So there you go. Just to make sure that nobody sneaks in before them, they got the 2 zeros in there.
So my analogy,
yes,
being a non-lawyer and trying to understand it, is more like this. Let's say a mug, right, some Bruno, some guy, shows up at your business dressed like a cop.
Yes. All right.
Right, with a badge.
Yes,
and
not
says,
a stripper.
Nice business you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
That does happen.
And you pick up the guy and charge him. And
yes.
The point is, you're not charging him, in this case, for making a threat. you're charging him for
you will
impersonating
eventually.
a cop.
Right. Okay.
Why? Because
Sure.
it's straightforward.
Yeah, you can't do that. There ought to be a law, and and there specifically, it just reminds me of the federal civil rights statutes, where it's that much worse if you're attempting to deprive someone of their civil rights under color of law, is the phrasing they use in these
Right,
federal
and
statutes.
that's the fourth indictment for Jack Smith with the January 6th stuff. Trying to deprive people's right to vote.
Yes.
However, people. French goes on to write that a lot of people looked at the Raffensperger call and they were really upset that Trump was threatening him.
Perfect threat. Okay.
Right? But Willis's focus, he writes, by contrast, isn't on the threat; it's the lies. And when you read the list of Trump's purported lies, they're absolutely incredible. His claims aren't just false; they're transparently, incandescently stupid.
Yes.
This was not a sophisticated effort to overturn the election. It was a shotgun blast of obvious falsehoods. And here's where the legal nuance gets interesting. While Willis still has to prove intent, the statute prohibits knowingly and willfully falsifying material facts. The evidentiary challenge is simpler than in Smith's case. To meet the requirements of federal law, Smith's charges must connect any given Trump lie to a larger criminal scheme. Willis has to prove that Trump willfully lied about important facts to a government official, and that's a lot simpler.
Yeah, it's on tape, for God's sake.
So it's true, yeah, because, every time he would, or somebody else would say, well, there's 733 dead people that voted, 9,274 people who voted twice,
Right.
Those are material claims that are lies.
Yes.
That you wouldn't just pull them out of the hat. You deliberately made those up.
Yes, and you got called
proving
on
that
it,
he
and you
was
still stuck
deliberately lying is a lot easier. It's true that the individual lying allegations are also tied to much larger claims about a criminal conspiracy and a racketeering enterprise.
Yes.
But if I'm a prosecutor, French writes, I can build from that single, simple foundation. Trump lied. The lies in and of themselves violated Georgia law. Once you prove that simple case, you laid the foundation for the larger racketeering case. Mm-hmm. And to him, that's what's happening.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a fine explanation of it, alongside all the other good ones. But yeah, and not a bad place to start. Or was it him, or was it the previous piece that was directly attacking the Ruth Marcus premise? They're both are really, but
yeah, this one.
Okay.
Ruth Marcus said, "Why do it?" And he's explaining why you do it.
Yeah, that was an outrageous piece, and I never did bother. I couldn't read all the way through it, but it's falling apart and being attacked everywhere. And I guess one thing that I haven't yet said about it anyway was just the premise, the idea of, well, isn't this too many prosecutions? And I'm just wondering, even if you entertain her idea that somehow there's a way to get to too many indictments of Trump, and she's complaining, well, there's the federal and the state, and I prefer federal because you can consolidate all the claims, etc. All right, but I mean,
fine. But the whole
hear
thing
me
sounds
out,
like
Ruth.
a slate pitch. I mean, why are you even suggesting
that's true.
this?
But just the idea of what you're looking at here is there's exactly one federal indictment of Donald Trump for his January 6th overthrow of the federal government problem, and exactly one state indictment on it. So, I mean, how you get from one, parentheses, Roman numeral one, or not Roman, Arabic numeral one. We could use a Roman if we want. But how you get from one to, gosh, isn't that too many? Usually one is probably the minimum number you can have and still have a number, so no.
New York Times Pitchbot retweeted Ruth Marcus and said, I can't top this.
It's really... it's quite sad and quite ridiculous. And also just, generally speaking, really, I guess French is sort of getting at this point, is you called the top officials in Georgia and attempted to get them to screw everything up by using their power as officials in the state. You violate that law, lying to them, trying to get them to do the wrong outcome based on your lies. This is a direct assault and a direct insult to Georgia and its state government.
It's
why
sovereign
are we?
government.
Why Ruth Marcus thinks that's easily remedied by having this federal government step into the state's
Marcus,
shoes
you don't
and
understand
represent
federalism.
them.
Didn't you listen
Right.
to our show?
Yeah, we didn't broadcast it yet, but couldn't you hear it coming? Why didn't you listen to my thoughts ahead of time? But yeah, I mean, she should have had those thoughts ahead of time. What business is it of the federal government when Georgia's sovereignty is insulted in this way? And they can represent them. I suppose they could cobble together the case, but then why have a Georgia? I have asked that question a number of times.
Well, why have a Florida? The
Right.
whole point is
that's the problem
you don't
with Georgia.
try
It
this
connects
case in
us
West
to
Virginia
Florida.
and Idaho. You try it in Florida and Georgia and New York and D.C. is because that's where it took place.
Well, that's another thing. Yes, there's 10,000 reasons why she should never have had that thought. And, of course, the question of whether it is one prosecution too many, well, I think it's 49 too few. There's another
I think
couple
he
states
committed
that
one
were,
crime too many. So
yeah,
what's your
well,
point?
that's true. Right, we're just trying to keep up.
For 8 long years, he
Ugh.
finishes, Americans have watched Donald Trump lie. These lies have been morally indefensible, but some may also be legally actionable. His campaigns and presidency may have been where the truth went to die, but the law lives, and the law declares that Trump cannot lie to Georgia public officials within the scope of their official duties. If Fani Willis can prove that he and his Confederates did exactly that, she will prevail in the broadest, most consequential prosecution in modern American political history. So
right.
I think he's got it right.
Yes. Well, righter than she does anyway.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know what she was thinking.
Now,
She's a
what's the
hand
effect of all of this on the public? And the answer is it matters.
Okay.
You may think it doesn't matter to a Republican primary electorate, to which I say, who freaking cares? This is about the election in 2024.
Yes,
Why the
general.
Trump indictments have not moved the needle with Republicans, writes Domenico Montanaro, who, by the way, is very good. And this is an NPR piece, but he
Killed his
doesn't
father.
do both sides in here.
Okay.
He says, at this point, with a fourth indictment that came out of Georgia on Monday night, stemming from Trump and allies' attempts to overturn the results of the 2020 election in the state, plus ones in New York and 2 at the federal level, the GOP base appears to believe the conspiracy, the deep state conspiracy against him, is pretty far and wide. Few of Trump's Republican primary opponents are criticizing him on the charges, and the GOP officials who do are turned into political pariahs. But what explains this? And is this nothing matters narrative actually something of a mirage, at least with the broader electorate? Let's dig into that. First, let's start out with the fact that the indictments have mattered. With most Americans, Trump remains highly unpopular. His favorability rating on average is only about 40%. With independents, he's in the 30s. And Trump has had a repelling effort with independent voters, repelling effect, who lean toward one party or the other and often decide the outcome of elections. More than half of independents, 52%, said they think Trump has done something illegal.
Well, yeah.
One poll found. That's up 11 points since March, just before the first indictment. And remember, that change comes after Trump's brand hurt Republicans in the 2022 midterms. Democrats won independents in the midterm by 2 points, according to exit polls, which led to Republicans winning a smaller than expected majority in the House and Democrats picking up a seat in the Senate. The result defied the history of how the party out of power works, and in both 2016 and 2020, Trump got less than 47% of the vote. 45.9 in 2016, 46.8 in 2020. That was before January 6th and these multiple indictments.
Yes.
Trump's done very little to expand beyond his base in the years since, and his toxicity with independents makes it hard to see his path to winning back the White House without a little help from a potential third party. Republicans are living in a different universe than Democrats or independents when it comes to Trump. And I will just add here for myself, what I find so annoying about Inside the Beltway reporting is they treat that different universe as if it's real. It is not. Trump has insulated himself with many Republicans with his cries of witch hunts, et cetera, and he would talk about conspiracies with no founding, some of which are cited in the Georgia indictment, as if they were proof of things that either had already been disproven or would go on to be. That's what they're doing with Hunter Biden now. It's garbage, whether they say it's something important or not. They're wrong. They're lying. They know it's garbage. Trump is set to use that playbook again in a news conference he set for Monday from his golf course in New Jersey. He's promising an irrefutable and conclusive report that will show he was right about a rigged election. I think it's all being orchestrated by Mike Lindell. Republican Governor Brian Kemp, whom Trump has targeted because he wouldn't validate his attempts to overthrow the election, swatted Trump's claims aside. The 2020 election in Georgia was not stolen, Kemp wrote.
Mm-hmm.
He noted correctly, no one with actual evidence of fraud has proven anything under oath in court. Our elections in Georgia are secure, accessible, and fair, and will continue to be as long as I'm governor.
Okay. Well, as long as he's guaranteeing it personally.
Right. Now, the people who speak out have suffered politically. Only 2 of the 10 House Republicans who voted for Trump's impeachment still have those jobs. And the primary opponents who've spoken out most forcefully don't have much support, like Pence, Hutchinson of Arkansas, Chris Christie of New Jersey, or Will Hurd of Texas. But that's 4 right there who are.
True.
So the Republican issue is one thing. But of Republicans who said they believe Biden lost, 56% said they based that on solid evidence, of which there is none. Montanaro writes.
Okay.
Versus 44% who said it was their suspicion only.
Oh. That's they're clear on that. That's good news. So
Trump's lack of support with the middle makes it hard to see a path for winning another term. It's possible if he gets third-party help, and it's really unclear, whether or not third parties really do help. There's at least one poll that says it helps Biden more than Trump. But that's what's going on here. And the fact of the matter is that regardless of what Republicans tell pollsters, there's quite a bit of Trump fatigue going on. People who were unwilling to speak up at all are starting to speak up, whether it's the 4 mentioned, Hutchinson, Hurd, Pence, et al. They are at least speaking. There are people like Brian Kemp who speak up. Georgia is a perfect example of Trump fatigue. The Georgia Republican Party is afraid it's going to cost them yet another election, having cost them 2 Senate seats. And so, the idea that, none of this matters, it does. And it's just going to take a while to see it. And if you're stuck inside the Beltway, you spend too much time listening to House Republicans and not enough time out there in the rest of the country, talking to actual Republicans who vote. Now, here's a Morning Consult poll, for example.
Yeah.
And I'll just read you the Morning Consult tweet. Biden is outperforming Trump and DeSantis among the general electorate. The recent focus on Hunter Biden hasn't hurt his father standing against either of the top 2 Republican presidential candidates. And that is from yesterday. How Trump and DeSantis perform against Biden in hypothetical matchup. Biden beats Trump 43-41. Biden beats DeSantis 43-37. And that coincides with AP NORC polling among all voters, which Aaron Blake highlighted today. Ron DeSantis' net image rating. In July 2021, favorable, not favorable. July 2021, DeSantis was a -3. October 22, -10. April 23, 2023, -14. June 23, -14. Today, -24.
What?
The more you get to know him, the more you dislike him. And speaking of remarkable declines, Blake adds, Pence has gone from a -6 in April to a -29 today.
Huh.
Neither of these guys is going to wind up being the Republican presidential nominee. But my point is, a lot of people look at Trump and say, look how he's gained since he's been indicted. You're missing the point. Right? The reason he's gaining isn't so much because he's been indicted. It's because Ron DeSantis is a putz. He's terrible. He's an awful candidate. He was the main attraction as being the competition. And he tanked. And that's one of the reasons why Trump went up. And they didn't have anybody else.
It's amazing. I mean, but what an insult to the rest of the field.
Yeah.
Well, we want somebody, and we're hardcore.
We want somebody else.
We want a smarter Trump. All right. Well, this one is actually kind of dumb.
Else. When I said somebody else, I was talking about you. I want somebody else.
Right. I mean, there's 15 people lined up to scoop up this.
And let me just, I threw this in at the end yesterday. I don't know if you had a chance to read it on the air, but this is Emerson College polling from yesterday.
Yeah, new second place.
Yeah, New Hampshire poll, 2024 GOP primary, Trump 49, Christie 9.
Yeah.
DeSantis 8.
Amazing.
Ramaswamy's at 3. And another poll, DeSantis had fallen below the dreaded Ramaswamy line. In this one, he falls below the dreaded Christie line.
The Ramaswamy
so
line.
Third place.
30 millibars.
And that's why Joe Trippi had tweeted, look, let me just be honest and frank and blunt here. DeSantis is terrible. He's the worst candidate I've seen in my 40 years in politics. He really needs to get out of the race.
Yeah.
That was a tweet. I don't have that handy, but boy, that was just so right on the mark.
Well, he is terrible, and I took it with a little grain of salt because it was a New Hampshire poll, and as you know, that's just like going to the state legislature and asking this question, and that's not like there are no diners in New Hampshire; it's just state legislatures all over the place.
So again, Trump 49,
stations.
Christie 9, DeSantis 8, Scott 6, Burgum 4, Haley 4, Ramaswamy 3. Ramaswamy's running behind Burgum. Ramaswamy does well on online polls and does terribly in polls where you have to pick up the phone and actually talk.
Oh, is that what it was in New Hampshire?
It's just one of those things. You'll see him. Oh, look at how he's no.
Yeah,
it's an illusion.
They just call the public phone in Dixville Notch, and whoever answers.
And in New Hampshire,
yes,
Mike Pence 1%.
Man, and they know who he is and everything.
Yeah.
Name recognition,
so, Pence has every reason to be a good witness because, he's got nothing else. He's not going to be president.
Yeah. Well, you want to stay famous? Be a witness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was the Fly, by the way, answering the poll on vacation in New Hampshire over the summer.
Well, they didn't poll the Fly, but I have a feeling he would double Pence's vote here.
He might. I loved landing on his face.
Right.
It was awesome.
Ramaswamy 3, the Fly on Pence's head 2, Pence 1.
But yeah, Christie, that was a very New Hampshire result, it seemed to me. Like all party apparatchiks answering the question. Yeah, Chris Christie. I mean, even Tim Scott.
He's from New Jersey, but basically the reason Christie can't win is everybody hates him outside of the Northeast, and they see him as a fast-talking New Yorker, even though he's from New Jersey.
Yes.
But on the other hand, boy, is he fun, because he says his piece, he's good at this, and he's going to tear Trump a new one. And it's great to see. It's not going to help him, but it'll help the country. Okay.
I mean, that must be what's on his mind. I'm sure he doesn't really think he's going to end up president, but they're weird people, politicians. Anyway, we enjoy it for what it's worth. And, okay. I love anybody who will go on the record and say Trump is terrible.
Sure.
At least for that, in that limited capacity.
Right.
I wouldn't let you babysit the kids. I just, All right. Well, that's good. That's a good number of things, too.
Yeah, that's all good.
All right.
Let's see what else we have for you.
If you like.
Here's another one from New York Times pitch, but I think I read this the other day, but I just love it. Whether it's Trump being indicted under laws meant for the KKK or it's Trump being indicted under laws meant for the mafia, the former president has a remarkable ability to connect with different constituencies. And it's true. And one of the things that matters here is how Trump is being perceived by the entire country. And this indictment stuff argue about, whether Meadows should or shouldn't be included. Is it weak? Is it strong? Should it be in federal or state control, federalism versus the states? It's saturating the discussion.
Yes.
And so even if you don't pay attention to politics, Donald Trump was indicted again, and it's bad, and it's sweeping, and the accusations are pretty broad. And, sometimes that's all you need to know.
Maybe. But yeah, that's true. That not only is the fact that he's being indicted seeping in, but yeah, it matters what he's being indicted for. I mean, at bottom, everyone can understand, say, if you wanted to entertain the Hunter Biden charges. Well, I'm not certain exactly what law it was or what they call it, but you're not supposed to take money and stuff, and there's bribery, and maybe he did it, and maybe his dad was in on it too, even though nobody has been able to prove that, et cetera, et cetera. But then I guess if there's anything in the world that can distract you from that, I guess it would be, well, the other guy is charged with, that's some litany, the KKK Act, He's, what else was the other one?
The mafia.
The mafia, RICO law. But and it's all on top of being charged with violating the Espionage Act and having a trial going on in New York about you're raping somebody and also bribing porn stars. Like, come on. Yeah. This is it. This is basically, everything that you figured, well, what would it take to distract you from a Democratic candidate for president who had a bribery rumor circulating? Well, how about, he's violating the Klan Act and the RICO and the Espionage Act and bribing porn stars and raping people. That would do it. Unfortunately, you'll never find such an idiot. It's an impossible situation. You would never have anybody who was the leading Republican candidate for the nomination who had all that going on.
Huh. Oh. Sam Stein has a very timely reminder, and this was a comment made right after the November election when Trump had lost but refused to concede.
Oh, yes, right.
And he says the GOP official's quote of Trump's actions shortly after the November election continues to be an all-timer. Here's the quote. "What's the downside for humoring him for this little one bit of time? No one seriously thinks the results will change," said one senior Republican official. "He went golfing this weekend. It's not like he's plotting how to prevent Joe Biden from taking power on January 20th.
Womp, womp. That's what he was doing. That's what goes on the golf course when you're Donald Trump.
He's tweeting about some lawsuits. They'll fail. They'll tweet some more, and then he'll leave.
And he did tweet some more. And he did leave. I mean, it's at bottom.
Probably the same Republican official said, look, Roe v. Wade, Dobbs, it's not going to come to anything.
Yeah, people will forget. Yeah, I did. I saw that one yesterday. Worth repeating because it is amazing. Well, now you know what the harm of humoring him was. Humoring him made him think that there were people who believed his lies and he should keep going. And I suppose not humoring him had a chance maybe of convincing some of the people around him, this is not working, we should stop. But he didn't have very many of those people around. So maybe it would have made no difference. Humor him, don't humor him. But yeah, it's funny because on the one hand, it's like, well, that is an all-timer. That's the most ridiculous misreading of the situation ever. But then again, looking at it piece by piece, well, actually, he was quite right about that. He did, in fact, file a bunch of lawsuits. He did lose all those lawsuits, and he did leave. So what's the problem? Oh, right. Okay, well, the violation of every act that's out there. That's the problem.
So that's the summary for today.
All right.
And guess what? We get to come back and do it again tomorrow.
That's right. And not just because he might be indicted again tomorrow. I don't know where. They'll surprise me. But because it's Thursday.
Well, there's superseding indictments.
Yeah. Anything could happen. They left out a comma somewhere.
All four places.
Right. Ruth Marcus is going to lose her mind when they get around to all of that. So I suspect it's already gone, though. Okay. Well, thank you, Greg, and we'll check in with you again tomorrow, and there'll be more thinking about this, I am sure.
I am sure.
Okay. Well, good to have you around then. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's go. Let's go. What else have we got to cover? There's more to do about Trump, and then some segue material, maybe, and then some other stuff. And that's the way the show will go. How do you like that as a description? All right. Well, one thing that we ought to do, because it is a weekday, is we should check in on what Amanda Marcotte has to say. For every David French article, there ought also to be an Amanda Marcotte opinion piece. Today's will help you, think about how the prosecution of Donald Trump is going to go. And I think it's aimed at doubters and the LOL, YOLO, nothing matters folks, where I find myself frequently. And it's hard not to be skeptical of the idea of Donald Trump finally finding his comeuppance. That I understand. And you're right to doubt. But it's also right to tell you that sometimes maybe something might work out, especially if you have a really good idea about why it might. And let's see what this one is. I forget why I parked this one, but it will come back to me as we read the headline here from Salon.com. Amanda Marcotte writing, Teflon Don, you remember that name for him, is a collective fiction. It's time to tell the story of Trump in jail. Okay. Trump still believes he's untouchable, says the subheader, and so do his dangerous followers. It's time for consequences that count. Well, maybe this is just aspirational after all. But anyway, we could use some of that. As soon as the magistrate judge in Washington warned Donald Trump that it was a crime to influence a juror or try to threaten or bribe a witness or retaliate against anyone related to his federal indictment, the one Ruth Marcus likes, for attempting to overturn the 2020 election, you could feel it coming. Trump would immediately flout the order his lawyers had agreed to in court. And sure enough, it took less than 24 hours for the 78 times indicted former host of The Apprentice to issue all caps challenges to the judge's authority directly on Truth Social. All caps again. If you go after me, I'm coming after you, he posted in his usual understated manner. Prosecutors promptly bundled up the threat into a request for a protective order. That was largely granted by U.S. District Court Judge Tanya Chutkan, who warned Trump, I will take whatever measures are necessary to safeguard the integrity of these proceedings. Now, of course, Trump sees that warning as a dare. Except for a brief campaign visit to Iowa, he spent most of last weekend doing what he loves best, delivering unhinged rants on social media, attacking the judge, the prosecutors, and, in a direct violation of the order, potential witnesses that he called out by name. And embedded herein is a X-post from Mark Zaid, who says, directly against federal court orders / admonition given Dworkin as a witness in the January 6th D.C. proceeding, expect his lawyers to be brought onto the hot seat soon, Trump's lawyers, that is. At some point, that individual's straw will be placed on the camel's back. It is George Conway capturing and retweeting Donald Trump's Truth Social message and labeling it this morning's first attempt at witness intimidation, wherein Donald Trump says, I am reading reports that failed former Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, Jeff Dworkin, will be testifying before the Fulton County grand jury. He shouldn't. I barely know him, but he was, right from the beginning of this witch hunt, a nasty disaster for those looking into the election fraud that took place in Georgia. And there's more, but never mind all of that. It's cut off anyway, so you won't be able to see it, and I'm not going to look for it. Trump, Amanda continues here, is showing no less restraint when it comes to the most recent round of indictments delivered by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis in Atlanta. Unsurprisingly, this latest round of spleen venting also featured some gross wordplay referring to a notorious racial slur. And, never mind. This is more garbage. This is him floating the idea of having this Monday press conference where he'll irrefutably show evidence, yada, yada, a major news conference, etc. But then playing around, as Amanda's keen eye notices, with just a wee bit of hinting at racial slurs by all of a sudden insisting that he needs to refer to the people who rigged the elections as riggers, wink, wink, and we'll see where that goes. Anyway, no doubt those being targeted this way remember the brutal assault on Paul Pelosi, husband of then Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, or the recent arrest of someone who threatened Barack Obama after Trump posted the former president's home address. No reasonable person can deny that the intent here is to intimidate witnesses, potential jurors, judges, and prosecutors. There is an annoying tendency among the pundit class, however, to act like it's completely out of the question for Trump's bail to be revoked. Well, kinda. Which would silence him by sending him to jail or possibly consigning him to house arrest. On Pod Save America last Thursday, host Dan Pfeiffer, despite claiming he is not in the prediction business, repeatedly scoffed at that idea. Legal experts on cable news and social media talked up such toothless consequences as further hearings, injunctions, or an accelerated trial schedule. But so far, the conventional wisdom is echoed in former federal prosecutor Neema Rahmani's comments to Salon. Is a judge actually going to jail Donald Trump in the middle of a presidential campaign? Probably not. To which I say, Amanda says, why not? Trump is a human being, approximately speaking, with a physical body that would fit quite nicely inside a jail cell. The only reason Trump is perceived as invincible is because he's managed to hex almost everyone into believing that he'll get away with everything every single time. All we need to do to change that is to stop believing in the collective fiction of Trump's impunity. It's not a law of physics. Donald Trump can go to jail. The only thing that's required is the will to make it happen. It wasn't long ago that the possibility of charging and indicting Trump for his numerous alleged crimes was routinely shrugged off as a #resistance fantasy. Anonymous FBI agents have told the Washington Post that higher-ups refused to entertain the idea of investigating Trump's role in the January 6th insurrection until the House Select Committee held public hearings and shamed them into it. Now, Justice Department Special Counsel Jack Smith has 2 criminal cases against Trump headed to court, one for the coup attempt and one for stealing classified documents. Willis filed a whopping racketeering indictment against Trump and 18 other alleged conspirators this week. As you know, the unimaginable can become reality. Trump is not physically impervious to justice. That imaginary protective shell around him is the result of choices of those in power, and it's time for those people to make different choices. Whether this is strategic or just the result of a sociopathic need to test boundaries, Trump's rapidly escalating violations of every court order are already shaking the mainstream certainty that locking him up is out of the question. Prominent legal experts have actually observed that it's the only real remedy for a defendant this badly out of control. Here, the observations of Ryan Goodman, tweeting, on the left, former President Trump intimidates a witness in Georgia case. On the right, Georgia law stating that to release a person on bail, the judge will have to find the defendant poses no significant risk of intimidating witnesses. Note, that is a presumption against release. Okay, I see. On the right and on the left. That is not the political right and left and what they're thinking, but rather a description of screen caps that he includes in his tweet here. I'm sorry. So that was rather confusing. I guess he's saying on the left, here's former President Trump on his Truth Social intimidating the witness in Georgia. That was, again, I'll have to take a look at it. The Jeff Duncan tweet. And I guess the whole rest of them, the tweet is available there. But on the right, the screen cap of what Georgia law says about bail and revoking bail. But they're talking about a couple different cases here, the federal and the state, and that's true. And I'm not certain that, it's unlikely, and I know that the judges will do everything they can not to resort to putting him in jail. And it is true that most people say any normal person who was awaiting trial and behaved this way would probably be thrown in jail pretty quickly. But anyway, Kyle Cheney of Politico pointed out an ironic subtext in Trump's online attacks on Judge Chutkan. Likely without meaning to, Trump's comments have highlighted Chutkan's observation that there's a double standard in play that leaves Trump free to strut, boast, and complain while so many of his foot soldiers face punishment. That's interesting as well. Kyle tweeting, what she did say is that Trump doesn't have carte blanche to attack/intimidate witnesses just because he's running a campaign. Trump also amplified this verbatim, funnily enough, from me. And then an update, Trump going after Chutkan again at 1 a.m., quoting her from her sentencing of January 6th defendant Christine Priola, in which she alludes to the fact that Trump, quote, remains free despite hundreds of supporters who went to the Capitol for him facing consequences for January 6th. Cheney also notes that Trump agreed to explicit conditions. Witness tampering is a crime punishable by prison all by itself. That's true. More Kyle Cheney tweets here, but back to what Amanda has to say. On MSNBC on Tuesday morning, Dave Arenberg, the state attorney in Palm Beach County, Florida, took this analysis a step further. I'm waiting to see if there's going to be a partial gag order because Donald Trump can't comply with one. And if he gets ordered to stay silent, you know he'll violate that. And that may be the quickest way that he ends up in an orange jumpsuit. People keep leaving trade the orange makeup for an orange jumpsuit jokes on the table. Come on, it's time, she says. Now, sure, there could be a logistical problem for the Secret Service, which protects all current and former presidents, if the judge sends Trump to jail for violating his release agreement. Those can surely be worked out, even if the only realistic answer is somewhat unsatisfying, putting Trump under house arrest and depriving him of his phone. Well, then that's still a lot better than doing nothing. Frankly, it's better for almost everyone if Trump actually loses his freedom for these threatening antics. It's better for witnesses, for the judge, for potential jurors, and for prosecutors. It's better for Trump's lawyers, who can do their jobs more easily without the constant headaches caused by their impulsive man-child of a client. I won't claim it's actually better for Trump himself, although, I've often thought he should be in 24/7 elder care anyway. But even he benefits in one way. History suggests that his poll numbers go up when he's being relatively quiet because people start to forget what a noxious a-hole he is. Most importantly, making Trump shut up is crucial to public safety. One of the most dangerous aspects of Trump's seeming invulnerability is that some of his followers start to believe that they're immune to all consequences themselves. Most of the January 6th insurrectionists weren't concerned with all the cameras around them, and many of them posted photos and videos of their escapades that day on social media. Trump's years of breaking the law with zero consequences has lulled them into thinking that they also were free to run buck wild without fear of prison. More than 1,000 people have now faced legal punishment for their role in the January 6th riot. That has definitely quelled the MAGA tribe's collective overconfidence, but it's reasonable to worry that if Trump keeps thumbing his nose at the law, his followers will start believing themselves to be untouchable all over again. Just last week, a self-proclaimed MAGA devotee was killed by the FBI. We haven't mentioned this one. After waving a gun at agents and public threats against President Biden and others perceived Trump opponents, I guess issuing public threats. It doesn't say that, but it should. Fox News and other right-wing outlets are professing outrage, reinforcing the message to the MAGA faithful that they have some kind of right to commit violent acts on Trump's behalf. With their hero's flagrant refusal to respect the straightforward court order, this dangerous sense of entitlement will only get worse. This is a good point, I think. Tossing Trump in jail, even briefly, would go a long way toward reminding those people that there's no special MAGA exemption from obeying the law. Wealth and privilege are only impregnable barriers to accountability if we believe they are. But it's not inconceivable for an elite person to get popped for a bail violation. Look at what happened just now to Sam Bankman-Fried, the disgraced FTX founder, now facing charges of financial fraud. He harassed a potential witness in his case, likely due to a Trumpian confidence that the judge wouldn't dare revoke his bail. But the judge did just that, and now a man who a year ago lived at a luxury resort in the Bahamas, I wonder which one, sits in jail awaiting trial. Trump's belligerence is so over the top that it can bamboozle people into thinking that nothing can be done to stop him. But that act could collapse pretty fast if those who hold actual power stopped playing along. It's worth remembering that in the end, Trump did leave office as scheduled on January 20th, 2021, without being physically dragged from the White House. He had spent the previous 2 months loudly refusing to admit he had lost the election and cooking up schemes to undo that fact. He clearly hoped his childish tantrum might convince everyone to give up and just let him have the office in perpetuity. But even the vague threat of personal conflict and humiliation was enough to make him skedaddle down to Mar-a-Lago when it was time to go. The moral of the story is simple. Donald Trump is a coward. He can be contained and controlled if he faces real consequences. Dealing with him just takes belief, imagination, and some spine. It can be done. Well, a valid point. It certainly can be done. Will they find it too troublesome? I don't know. Any number of ways we can go on that one. All right, let's see. What we might want to do now, like as I said, despite the fact that I haven't gone through to clean everything up on Rosalind McGregor's latest submissions here, I can, I think, rather quickly, like I did with Darwin's submission, still boost the levels a little bit so that we can turn things up a bit and hear things a little clearer. I don't think I have to boost it quite as much as I did before. But so also, Rosalind frequently benefits from just a little bit of tightening up and taking out, breaths and pauses and the occasional stumble that we all go through. But you'll hear it in its natural state here today. And as it occurred to me, I couldn't have edited Darwin's anyway because of the musical bed. It would have been obvious every time I cut something that there was a weird missing beat in the music. We don't have that problem here, but we do have this problem. This is today's news, essentially. This is about the case against the fraudulent electors in Michigan. So we ought to keep track of that in parallel with everything we're watching down in Georgia. And let's let Rosalind bring us up to date then.
Good morning, David.
Ooh, good morning.
Exciting things keep happening in Michigan, which means I have to share them with your listeners.
Okay, hang on just a second. Let me work on the soundboard on this one, and I'll just turn things down a wee bit if I can get it right. Oh, yeah, where are we coming from? From out of WavePad? Yeah, all right. Well, let me turn the volume down a little bit that way and see if that helps. I boosted it just a little more than I thought. But all right, go ahead. I won't interrupt again, I hope.
Today I'd like to show how embedded the false electors from Michigan were in with the GOP. These folks are not just random diner customers. Mm-hmm. Thanks to the Michigan Advance for this concise and detailed list of the 16 people who wanted to overthrow our elections in Michigan. The 16 people are Kathy Burden, 70, of Snover, Michigan, a Michigan Republican National Committee woman. William Hank Choate, 72, of Cement City, Michigan, served as chairman of the Jackson County Republican Party. Amy Facinello, 55, of Grand Blanc, Michigan, a trustee on the Grand Blanc Board of Education who ran on right-wing values and has posted QAnon content on social media.
Sounds like something I'd say about somebody censoring things. You're a Grand Blanc, you know that? How do you like that?
Clifford Frost, 75, of Warren, Michigan, ran for the 28th district seat in the State House of Representatives in 2020, but lost in the Republican primary. Stanley Grott, 71, of Shelby Township, Michigan, a GOP power broker in Macomb County, serving on the Shelby Township Board of Trustees as well as the township clerk. In 2018, he ran for Secretary of State, but abruptly dropped out of the race, which became the center of an alleged payoff scandal that resulted in then Michigan Party Chair Ron Weisner paying a $200,000 state fine for violating campaign finance law. John Haggard, 82, of Charlevoix, Michigan, a plaintiff in a case against Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson attempting to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Marianne Henry, 65, of Brighton, Michigan. As of June, Henry's LinkedIn listed her as the treasurer of the Greater Oakland Republican Club. Timothy King, 56, of Ypsilanti, Michigan, a plaintiff in a case against Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson attempting to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Michelle Lundgren, 73, of Detroit, Michigan, ran for the 9th district seat in the State House of Representatives in 2022, but lost in the general election. Michonne Maddock, 55, of Milford, Michigan, former co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party and vocal proponent of Trump's false claims that the 2020 election was stolen. She attended a pro-Trump event on January 5th, 2021 in D.C. the day before the insurrection, and she is the co-owner of A1 Bail Bonds, a bail bondsman company, along with her spouse, GOP State Representative Matt Maddock. James Renner, 76, of Lansing, Michigan, served as a precinct delegate in 2020 for Watertown Township. Maria Rodriguez, 64, of Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan, ran for the 2nd district seat in the State House of Representatives in 2022 as a Republican, but lost to now House Speaker Joe Tate. Rose Rook, 81, of Paw Paw, Michigan, a former Van Buren County GOP chair who also served on the executive committee for the county party. Marion Sheridan, 69, of West Bloomfield, Michigan, co-founder of the Michigan Conservative Coalition, a right-wing group founded by the Maddocks. Sheridan was also a plaintiff in a case to decertify the 2020 election in Michigan. Ken Thompson, 68, of Orleans, Michigan, an Ionia County Republican who served as a precinct delegate and is the chair of Ionia County Republican Party's August convention in 2022. Kent Vanderwood, 69, of Wyoming, Michigan, mayor of the city of Wyoming and vice president of the Timothy Group, which advances Christian organizations. So that tells you who was a member of the false electors and wanted to overthrow our elections in Michigan. That's my time for today. This is Rosalind McGregor signing off. Back to you, David.
All right. Thanks, Rosalind. That's an elderly crew now that I look at it here. And I'm not elderly, like they're all over 90 years old, but I think the youngest person listed, 2 people were 55. I mean, I'm 55, so I'm going to be when Donald Trump surrenders anyway. But that, you know, that means the ARP is already bothering you for membership. So, you know, that counts for something in terms of your agedness, I guess. But yeah, that's interesting. I just noticing sort of how many people involved are coming up in their 60s or 70s. Let's see, the ages were 70, 72, 55. Amy Facinello and what's her name? Michonne Maddock are the 2 55-year-olds. Everybody else is over that. 70, 72, 55, 75, 71, 82, 65, 56, 73, 55, 76, 64, 81, 69, 68, 69. That's some lineup. They're all kids. But eventually you got to grow up and learn to be able to tell better what you should be doing with your time, kids. But youthful mistakes for all of them. All right. That piece, by the way, is part of a larger article. That was just a selection, sort of the sidebar here of the 16 people charged and who they are. But the surrounding article, why don't I share that as we head into the break? Not that much time to share the rest of it anyway. So I'll do Rosalind that favor and give the context here. A Michigan legislator was caught on tape. This is I forgot the headline here. GOP Representative Maddock on tape. We're going to have a civil war or some sort of revolution. People do frequently say that, but you probably shouldn't be promoting that from his perch as a state elected official. Anyway, a Michigan legislator, that's him, Maddock, was caught on tape predicting somebody would, quote, shoot someone, or suggesting anyway, and a civil war could happen if the government continues to prosecute conservatives for election crimes. You keep catching us and prosecuting us, that's law and order, but if you do it to them, it's cool. If you do it to us, we're going to have a revolution. The comments heard on a recording provided to the messenger are from State Representative Matt Maddock from Milford, who, along with his wife, former Michigan GOP co-chair Michonne Maddock, held a fundraiser at their Milford home on August 4th. So this is how seriously they take the worry about we could have a civil war that ends up rending this country in two and pitting we'll say person against person, sibling against sibling is the new modern expression of this phenomenon. And how seriously did they take this prospect? They were having a fundraiser called the Free the 16 Electors Poolside Party. Whee! That was the name of the fundraiser, hosted by the Grand New Party PAC. Get it? Grand Old Party, Grand New Party. Chaired by State Representative Steve Cara of Three Rivers. The event also briefly featured Michonne Maddock, who is one of the 16 Michigan Republicans charged last month with submitting false electoral votes in December of 2020 in support of Trump. President Biden defeated Trump, as you know, by more than 7 million votes nationwide and by more than 154,000 votes in Michigan. And yet, here's Maddox saying, if the government continues to weaponize, ding, 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 these departments against conservatives and the citizens that they are then the taxpayers, you know what's going to happen in this country? Someone responded, communism. I don't think that follows. But, well, the goal is communism, right? Maddox continued, or Marxism, or either or. The Democrats' dream, right? But what's going to happen before that? So I don't want to tell you you're wrong because you paid a lot of money to come to my pool party, but you're wrong. Not communism. What's going to happen is shooting people. Someone's going to get so pissed off that they're going to shoot someone, said Maddox. That's what's going to happen. Or we're going to have a civil war or some sort of revolution. That's where this is going. And when that happens, we're going to get squashed. People here are going to be the first ones to go. That's interesting. Usually when they are in the middle of predicting this civil war, they think they're going to win. So it's nice of him to chime in, saying that they're probably going to be the ones that lose. Michonne Maddox can be heard saying, there are other electors here, but I didn't want to out them. They're just among the crowd, and I didn't know if they wanted to say anything, but it's really better for none of us to say anything, which is hard because I like to say stuff. But she didn't use the stuff word. It's the other S word. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Thankfully, once again, here on Netroots Radio. So were you wondering who the other electors, at least one elector, fake elector, false elector, fraudulent elector who was at the party? It's the other 55-year-old, because they love to party. The 55-year-olds, they haven't grown up yet. Also present was Amy Facinello, the Grand Blanc, right? Grand Blanc, do they say? Yeah, it looks like the French, I'm sure. Blanc, B-L-A-N-C. But Grand Blanc, Board of Education trustee and former vice chairwoman of the Genesee County Republican Party, who was also charged in the fake elector scheme. She has something to say. It's better if we don't say anything. Here's Amy to say something. I just want to let you know that it's very heartwarming to see so many people here tonight supporting us. She said, it's been very difficult, as you can imagine. So I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. You're all under arrest. Maddox, Facinello, and their 14 co-defendants each face multiple felonies, including election law forgery and conspiracy to commit election law forgery. All 16 electors have been arraigned and have pleaded not guilty. They are then listed in the piece, and that's what Rosalind provided to us. By the way, there's more. Matt Maddox further notched up the rhetoric, making comparisons between Republicans who have questioned elections and the gassing of Jews by Nazis in the Holocaust. Another great idea to parallel their having committed crimes and being held to account for it in public trial to summary execution of 6 million Jews. That's a great analogy. They're trying to take away our right to appeal an election or just to question the election, he said. They want to make damn sure that anyone who questions the election or disputes the election in 2024 is threatened by what they're doing to our electors and other people throughout this nation, that you will not say anything. You are going to shut the F up. He just actually says, shut the F. That's the quote. I like that. And you are going to walk into that gas chamber. That's what they want because that's what's coming for us. So he's given to flighty rhetoric. No doubt about that. And of course, another example of the, overblown hyperbolic claims. They're doing this to us because we're questioning the election. No, we're doing this to you because you questioned the election. You got a day in court. The court said your questions are dumb and there's no proof that they should even be asked, but you got your day in court and you lost. So your remedy in your mind was, I'll forge election documents. Yeah, you're actually in trouble for forging election documents, not for questioning the results. Lots of people question the results. Everybody questioned the results. They had the election, and everybody who turned on the news questioned the results. What are the results of this election? I'd like to know. That's my question. Don't ask that question. They'll put you in the gas chamber. No. First of all, they don't put you in a gas chamber. And second of all, the only people who really have anything to worry about are the people who said, well, I questioned the results and I got the answer and I said, I don't care. I'm going to forge different results instead. Those are the people who are in trouble. And by the way, gas chamber on the one hand, pool party fundraiser on the other. I really don't know can anyone truly say that one on a cosmic scale is better or worse than the other. Well, they're going to put us in the gas chamber for questioning this election. We're at a pool party. Communism. Okay, whatever, dude. Neither Matt Maddock nor Michonne Maddock returned a request for comment by the Michigan Advance, which is what the publication is that we're reading right now. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, a Democrat whose investigation resulted in the charges, was a target of Republicans' ire. By the way, not that much investigation necessary, although when they finally press the case, they'll be glad they did the investigation. But they signed papers saying we're frauds and mailed it to the government. So I don't know. Charging them won't require that much investigation, but I'm sure some investigative work has to be done. Anyway, the fundraiser invite says proceeds from the event, quote, will be used to support the legal defense funds for the 16 Michigan electors fighting the politicized attacks from the evil AG, Dana Nessel. My goal is to get a resolution up to impeach Dana Nessel, said State Representative James DeSantis of Carleton, I don't know how they say it. He was heard saying this on the recording. She has obviously committed corruption with this corrupt prosecution. The law is there. Where? Now we need to get the Republicans on paper to sign the resolution to impeach Dana Nessel. DeSantis then told the crowd that the Democratic majority in the Michigan House was 56-54, noting that 2 Democrats could potentially vacate their seats as they are running for mayoral races in their respective districts. So, if both of those go for 6 months, we're 54-54, and we have recalls that are going on in our state. If a few of those Democrats are recalled, it's even less than that. So don't lose heart. Don't think that all is lost. That is a long way around to it, isn't it? Right. Well, the president lost his reelection bid. Oh no, we're going to fake documents to make it look like he won his reelection bid. Oh no, now we're being prosecuted for that. Well, maybe we can impeach the person prosecuting us for it. No, you can't. You don't have a majority. Well, first of all, we're going to do it in strictly partisan lines. So every Republican is totally going to vote for this. And maybe 2 of the Democrats will resign their seats. Oh, and maybe some of them will be recalled. And if we do that, then we'll be able to impeach the Democrat who's prosecuting us. But then, of course, he has to be convicted in the state Senate. I don't know how well that's going to go. And in the meantime, somebody else could, of course, prosecute us for it instead. Like the deputy attorney general will probably just continue the case. But then remember that if we eventually win, then 4 years after the fact, we might be able to vindicate our belief that the other guy actually won the presidential election. Good plan. Just keep digging. Neither DeSantis nor Nessel returned requests for comment. In response to the tape, the Michigan Democratic Party issued a statement questioning, look out, questioning, you might go to jail, questioning how Republican leadership planned to respond. What if what we're left wondering is if House Minority Leader Matt Hall and his new fundraising chief, disgraced former Governor Rick Snyder, support this kind of violent and dangerous rhetoric, which is becoming increasingly common among members of the House Republican caucus, stated the release. A request for comment from Hall was also not returned. The advance asked Amber McCann, spokesperson for the Michigan House Speaker Joe Tate, the Democrat of Detroit, if the Speaker planned a censure or other action against Maddock. Last session, when Republicans controlled the House, Maddock was kicked out of the GOP caucus for allegedly leaking confidential discussions. I didn't know that, or I didn't remember that if I did. Anyway, I don't know one Democrat or any rational person for that matter who would agree with anything Maddock has to say, McCann told the Advance. I think what's more noteworthy is the silence from Republican leaders in response to his rhetoric. In addition to the alleged attempt at submitting fake electoral certificates, Michonne Maddock helped to organize busloads of West Michigan Republicans to travel to D.C. for the January 6th Stop the Steal rally featuring Trump. She and Matt Maddock appeared at the January 5th rally, as noted by Roslyn, although she claims that they were in a hotel when the violence started the next day. The repeated false claims by the Maddocks and others of fraudulent voting in 2020's election come in spite of an investigation by the then Republican-controlled Senate Oversight Committee, court rulings, and audits that have repeatedly upheld the results of Biden's win. Several days after the January 6th riot, however, the Maddocks joined a far-right Facebook group where the possibility of civil war was also discussed. So they just like the idea of talking about civil war. It makes them, I guess, sound tough in their minds. And what can I tell you? They're a bunch of idiots. But you knew that, but you didn't know perhaps the extent to which these two in particular were idiots. All right. Many more directions to go in, lots to share, things we ought to get to. Let's race around and scroll through Pocket and see what we can add to the mix. There's so much. There's a lawfare piece about the Coffee County voting machines. There's a Washington Post piece about that. There's even a New York Times piece that covers that mostly. Lots of other things that I feel like we ought to share. Other stories we haven't gotten to. Man. And one thing we should acknowledge is that there are two Federalist Society associated Republicans out there circulating a case for using the 14th Amendment to actually finally, disqualify Donald Trump for running for office. So it's interesting that the Federalist Society even, bothering with this. And the case is pretty straightforward. It's one that it's interesting that, in order to get the New York Times' notice, I guess, some Republicans or some Federalist Society types actually have to be the ones to say it. But the case is the same as everybody else's. The clause 3 of the 14th Amendment, right? It's section 3 of the amendment. I can't remember. That says if you, take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, but then subsequently engage in insurrection, you're going to be barred from office. That was originally intended to bar from office those who participated in the Confederacy's civil war against the United States. And you may recall that there was a theory advanced by Madison Cawthorn. Remember that guy, when somebody tried to keep him off the ballot using the same thing. And he said, oh, no, this is prospective in nature. And it was definitely the intention of the framers of the 14th Amendment post-Civil War to not only excuse those who had participated in the Civil War, but also to allow for the basically waiving all of this against all future insurrectionists, which is almost certainly not the case. And he actually had trouble with getting a judge to buy that, but then he lost his nomination in his primary race, and we were rid of him possibly forever. So that was good news. But we should note for the record that that's happening. Perhaps we can spend some time discussing it and go over the argument and whether it's substantially different in any way from the ones made before. But let's see. I want to instead, maybe we'll jump into the discussion of a couple other items instead. Where to? How about this piece? This looks relatively short. Dahlia Lithwick chimed in to confirm my priors, everybody. That's super important. So in Slate magazine, she notes Trump's last two indictments complement each other perfectly. So I don't know if this was meant to be a response to Ruth Marcus, but it's going over similar ground where other people have been led by responding to Ruth Marcus. But other things that we have noted along the way are interesting parallels, and this article makes that point, but it's Dahlia Lithwick making it, so it's worth perhaps repeating. The two most recent indictments filed against Donald Trump are mirror images in many ways. I think I said Black Mirror in some ways, right? But was this what I was referring to? Can't remember now. Jack Smith's federal document filed in Washington was spare almost to the point of being an inky line drawing, whereas Fani Willis's Georgia filing is rich and detailed and pointillist, which is why it's twice the length, I guess, and why I haven't yet been able to read it on the air. It just seems like it will take forever, but maybe it's the more important of the two in many ways to read and discuss. Smith targeted one defendant only, whereas Willis went after 19 defendants on 41 counts. Smith mentions a handful of co-conspirators. Willis notes 30 unindicted co-conspirators. As Norm Eisen and Amy Lee Copeland point out, Smith's case will likely be blacked out for television and audio audiences, whereas Willis's suit will most likely become must-see TV for weeks on end. Jennifer Rubin argues that the D.C. trial will happen quickly, while the Georgia case may face months of wrangling, flipping, bargaining with conspirators, and lengthy pretrial shenanigans. Claire Potter points out that Willis can seize Trump's assets under Georgia's RICO law. How do you like that? And Rick Hasen observes that Fani Willis has centered race and radicalized vote suppression in a fashion that is far more explicit than the federal analog. So why have both, Ruth? Jack Smith, as a literary character, is tight-lipped and spare. Willis has been more voluble and open, and although Trump has been unsparing in his vitriol directed at both prosecutors, he has been at his racist, misogynistic worst with respect to Willis. That Smith did as little as was necessary to secure a clean conviction, while Willis scooped up every text, threat, and goon from Pennsylvania to Arizona to Coffee County, Georgia, means there will be a minimalist trial and a maximalist trial, a high-speed black and white missile, and a slower full-color IMAX version. Both renditions will pull in the same direction, and each will ensure that the 2024 election season plays out between Trumpian jaunts to and from the defendant's table. There's one other notable contrast between the two stories that will be unspooled regarding the very similar events that took place after Donald Trump learned he'd lost the election and decided he would win it through organized crime. Smith chose to tell the story of an abstraction, crimes against democracy and the peaceful transfer of power. Willis is telling a concrete and detailed story of crimes against voters and election workers, black voters in particular, female black election workers in specific. In effect, Trump is on trial in D.C. for trying to break democracy, and in Fulton County, Georgia, for trying to set aside black votes, though that is, a prominent feature of count 4 in the D.C. indictment. The two stories are deeply connected, but they are also two very distinct acts of violence against elections. Smith reminds us what the country nearly lost, and Willis recalls what black voters have almost never won. This really is, even if it's not designed to be a direct rebuttal to Ruth Marcus, it serves very well in that role. Finally, and again, this is both atmospheric and also very important, Fani Willis has not just formally named Trump as a mobbed-up crime boss, but also placed him squarely behind the wheel of a national criminal clown car. For Trump, stripped away from the sober officials who once lent him intellectual heft and political credibility, his final public act may well be honking sadly on the oversized horn. Oh, wait, we have something like that too, right? Yeah, not the horn that we have in mind, but okay. Surrounded by the likes of Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, and Jeff Clark. The only thing more piteous than the mental picture of a diminished Donald Trump in the dock standing trial for lies, forgeries, and bullying Is Donald Trump doing so in the presence of a whole host of people, tragically with law degrees, who are living case studies in moral and intellectual mediocrity? His co-defendants are living proof that the personnel equivalent of spray tan that briefly tried to burnish him into looking like a principled and sober commander-in-chief after 2016, John Bolton, John Kelly, Bill Barr, among others, had well and truly departed the scene by the time of the 2020 election assault. To quote Hemingway, how do you like this? This legal process has played out slowly and then quickly. Still, it's vitally important that what we've seen in the 6-car pileup of litigation against Trump is happening at state and federal levels, in criminal and civil courthouses, and in televised and non-televised courtrooms, and that we will find ourselves spending the time between now and the 2024 election pretty much daily monitoring everything from Trump's attempts to evade election finance regulations, defamation law, and the rules against being a magpie with national security documents. In addition to these two major trials around undermining free and fair elections. This matters because in chief, this is what the rule of law looks like. Trials, witnesses, testimony, evidence, judges, juries, and possible convictions. It matters because all the big sillies who once said that impeachment and the elections were not the appropriate forum in which to decide matters of justice, the buck stops now at justice. And with all due respect to Lindsey Graham, it is not a good look when you narrowly evade being named as part of a criminal conspiracy that included making mobbed-up threats to election workers. Donald Trump will no doubt add the newest Georgia indictment to his vast trophy case of whinings, grievances, and sacred sufferings. For some subset of his enthusiasts, it will serve as proof that he is the best, smartest, most long-suffering messianic figure in human history. But every time Trump tells an audience that he is facing these criminal charges for them, his listeners must wonder whether falsifying documents and lying to elected officials and threatening women in their kitchens is in fact a necessary component of their own civilian lives. Fani Willis adds her evidence against Trump to the heaping pile of stuff none of us ever actually does because only Tony Soprano does them. That lesson may never sink in for some diehards, but it can indeed begin to look both petty and grimy. This case is important, if not essential, because, like its predecessors, it peels off yet another layer of spray tan to reveal the truth below. Well put, no doubt about that. By the way, at the mention of Rudy Giuliani, I am reminded that last night I decided, for some reason, to sit down and start watching the movie Charlie Wilson's War. A very interesting case study of the time period. Some real hallmarks of the time that are long gone now, including the character really of Charlie Wilson all by himself. But one of the subplots of the story, and I can't remember the history of it, and I also haven't seen how it develops in the movie. But at some point, Charlie Wilson is in trouble because there's somebody who must also have been in trouble, alleging that they saw him at a party, and we did see him at this party in the movie, in Las Vegas, where there were strippers and cocaine present, and that this person says, I actually saw Congressman Wilson using cocaine at the party. I don't know whether that was actually true or not. I don't think that happens on screen anyway. But what's interesting is that the case is being prosecuted from out of the Southern District of New York for some reason. He's not from New York. He's from Texas. The party was in Las Vegas. I don't really know what's going on. But at any rate, it is mentioned obviously and prominently that in the movie that the prosecution is being led by one Rudolph W. Giuliani, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York at the time. Ever heard of him? They're asking Wilson. He says no, but we've heard of him, and yeah, it's kind of funny. I laughed out loud, and I don't know if it was supposed to be that kind of laugh out loud, but I think everyone was supposed to get a chuckle out of it by the time we saw that, because when they made the movie, in those days he was a viable presidential candidate and had been America's mayor post 9/11, et cetera, et cetera. But now, just a RICO co-conspirator at this point and co-defendant when it comes to Georgia's pressing of the law. Okay, so let's see a couple of other things. One thing I guess I'll skip over now to some reading from the Washington Post, just so that I can get it on the record. I mentioned it yesterday, and it deserves time. Judge rules in favor of Montana youths, or Utes, as some might say it, maybe even Rudolph W. Giuliani, in landmark climate decision. What's happening here? This is a monumental decision, says a lawyer for the young plaintiffs. I guess their youth is the key factor here. The ruling could influence how judges handle similar cases in other states. Kate Selig reports for the Post. In the first ruling of its kind nationwide, a Montana state court, and why have state courts, asks Ruth Marcus, decided on Monday in favor of young people who alleged the state violated their right to a clean and healthful environment by promoting the use of fossil fuels. I mean, old people could sue too, but they didn't. The court well, maybe they did. I don't know. The court determined that a provision in the Montana Environmental Policy Act has harmed the state's environment and the young plaintiffs by preventing Montana from considering the climate impacts of energy projects. The provision is accordingly unconstitutional, the court said. This is a huge win for Montana, for youths, and for democracy and for our climate, said Julia Olson, the executive director of Our Children's Trust, which brought Held versus Montana. More rulings like this will certainly come. The sweeping win, one of the strongest decisions on climate change ever issued by a court, could energize the environmental movement and usher in a wave of cases aimed at advancing action on climate change, experts say. Huzzah, we say to that. The ruling, which invalidates the provision blocking climate considerations, also represents a rare victory for climate activists who have tried to use the courts to push back against government policies and industrial activities that they say are harming the planet. And they are. In this case, it involved 16 young Montanans ranging in age from 5 to 22. I suspect someone helped the 5-year-old, who brought the nation's first constitutional and first youth-led climate lawsuit to go to trial. These youths are elated by the decision, according to Our Children's Trust, who I guess organized them and helped them through this. Though the cumulative number of climate cases around the world has more than doubled in the last 5 years, youth-led lawsuits in the United States have faced an uphill battle. Already, at least 14 of the cases have been dismissed, according to a July report from the UN Environment Program and Columbia University's Sabin, S-A-B-I-N, Center for Climate Change Law. The report said about 3/4 of the approximately 2,200 ongoing or concluded cases were filed before courts in the United States. But the number of successes internationally is growing, as is the diversity of those taking these cases to court, including a rise in legal actions brought by youths, women's groups, local communities, and indigenous peoples. Of the cases that have been decided, more than half have had outcomes favorable to climate action, according to a 2023 report from the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment. The Montana case will face an appeal to the state Supreme Court. Emily Flower, a spokesperson for Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen, Knudsen, confirmed on Monday. Knudsen, a Republican, of course. She decried the ruling as absurd and said Montanans cannot be blamed for changing the climate. Their same legal theory has been thrown out of federal courts and courts in more than a dozen states, said Flower. It should have been here as well. But unfortunately you are pre-wrong, or at least temporarily pre-wrong, it turns out. You don't like that very much when it happens to you, do you? Despite the track record of dismissals for youth-led climate cases in the United States, experts said the Montana youths had an advantage in the state's constitution, which guarantees a right to a clean and healthful environment. How do you like that? Stupid commies. Montana, a major coal producer, is home to the largest recoverable coal reserves in the country. Recoverable meaning we can get them, I guess. That's interesting. The plaintiffs, it's an interesting terminology. The plaintiffs' attorneys say the state has never denied a permit for a fossil fuel project. The youths focused on this constitutional right across 5 days of emotional testimony in June, where they made claims about injuries they have suffered as a result of climate change. A 15-year-old with asthma described himself as a prisoner in my own home when isolating with COVID during a period of intense wildfire smoke. Ricky Held, the 22-year-old plaintiff for whom the lawsuit is named, detailed how extreme weather has hurt her family's ranch. Sure. Okay. Held testified that a favorable judgment would make her more hopeful for the future. I know that climate change is a global issue, but Montana has to take responsibility for our part in that, she said. Attorneys for the state countered that Montana's contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions is small. Is it, though? Or will it always be? What about fracking, etc.? Anyway, if the law in question were altered or overturned, Montana Assistant Attorney General Michael Russell said, there would be no meaningful impact or appreciable effect on the climate. The state began and rested its defense on the same day, bringing the trial to an unexpectedly early close on June 20th. In a pivot from his expected defense disputing the climate science behind the plaintiff's case, the state instead focused on arguing that the legislature should weigh in on the contested law, not the judiciary. Russell derided the case in his closing statement as a week-long airing of political grievances that properly belongs in the legislature, not a court of law. Michael Girard, the founder of Columbia's Sabin Center, said the change in strategy came as a surprise. And I guess we're really running out of time here, so let's roll it and get through the rest. Everyone expected them to put on a more vigorous defense, he said, and they may have concluded that the underlying science of climate change was so strong that they didn't want to contest it. The state's defense was unsuccessful. Judge Kathy Seeley determined that the state's emissions could be fairly traced to the legal provision blocking Montana from reviewing the climate impacts of energy projects. She further wrote that the state's emissions and climate change have caused harm to the environment and the youth plaintiffs. Every additional ton of greenhouse gas emissions exacerbates plaintiffs' injuries and risks locking in irreversible climate injuries, she wrote in the ruling. There's a bit more here, but we won't get through all of it. But kudos to the kids there and the foundation helping them out. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. It reminds me, we should just point out, this is just one more thing where Republicans use their majorities in state legislatures to do dumb stuff like, well, we don't like it when you have to do environmental impact statements when you want to do an infrastructure project or a energy development project. Let's rule it out of order. Let's simply pass a law that says you don't have to do that for the things that you should very much have to do that for. And they just, once again, wrote themselves an exception in the law to make themselves comfortable and make it easier to exploit things for money. And guess what? If you have a constitutional guarantee to a clean environment, you can leverage that.
Radio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
And more specifically, you most certainly leverage it to erase a stupid exception that the Republicans designed, sort of a stand your ground for fossil fuel industry, a fake provision that they gave themselves to make life easier for themselves while they exploit everyone else. All right, we signing off. Justice will take it away next.